So finally, I made an appointment at Sharky's. And when we got there, she kind of started to panic a little bit, so I wanted to like show her some, she got nervous, so I wanted to like show her some pictures of short haircuts. And when you Google short haircuts kids, they show you quote unquote girls' haircuts, right? And when she saw those photos, she panicked and she was like, no, those are girls, those are girls, those are girls. And then I showed her photos of boy haircuts. And she picked out the one she wanted. And that's what I got her. And she loved it. And she has no idea how many conversations I have had with people explaining why I let her get this haircut. Incidentally, Turtle's also the same kid who asked me unbidden for ballet lessons, which I of course signed her up for. Also, like, those ballet moms have like no idea what to do with me. Like, my gender is the look that I get when I enter with my kids. They're like, I was talking to another parent in my kid's daycare, and I found out that the other parents and the teachers had like kind of noticed that the Turtle wore a lot of like boy clothes, right? Especially after she got this haircut. And by boy clothes, I mean like shirts with Batman and sharks on them, right? And they noticed that, you know, Turtle had a short haircut and her sister doesn't. And they wondered, like, if I did it on purpose. Like, if I had randomly picked one to, like, do gender experiments on. Like, I don't have better shit to do. And I wonder, like, if I presented as a more, like, feminine mom, do you think that they would have asked me that? I don't know. Like, did I make my daughter wear boys' clothes and get a short haircut to, like, make a point? My babies were born 2 months early, and they had to spend 37 days in the neonatal intensive care unit, or NICU. They were 3.5 pounds each. And when they were born, they were immediately taken away from me. I didn't get to hold them. They had to rush them upstairs to the NICU so that they could make sure that they were breathing and that their hearts and lungs worked. I didn't get to see them for 6 hours. Once they were in NICU, they were separated from each other because they didn't want one to get sick and have it spread to the other one. So they were in separate bassinets. And it was 2 weeks before I was allowed to hold them both at the same time. And I put them both naked on my chest for skin to skin, and they immediately reached for each other. Can you imagine? Can you imagine knowing that there was someone else there from the very beginning of your existence, someone whose heartbeat you memorized, and in an instant they're gone and you don't know if you'll ever see them again? And as for me, hospital kicked me out after 48 hours, which meant that I was home without my babies, and I couldn't smell them anymore. I couldn't feel them move in me anymore. They were gone. I'm fairly certain that my body thought that they were dead because my milk supply was hard to keep up. And so I pumped every 3 hours. And when that wasn't enough, I pumped every 2. I had a C-section, which meant that I couldn't use my upper body to get myself in and out of bed. So I used my legs to propel me out of bed. And I couldn't drive. And Mike had to go back to work. Thank you, unpaid 2 weeks of paternity leave. So I would take a lift to the hospital 2 to 3 times a day to deliver milk. Sometimes I did it at night. Any excuse I had to go back to that nursery, to see them, to smell them, to hold them so that they could be near me. The last few months of gestation are important because it is not only when babies exponentially gain weight, but is when babies develop the mechanism for learning how to suck and then swallow and then breathe. So at one point, once they were old enough not to be fed through tubes, through their noses, my spouse and I had to teach them how to drink, swallow, and then breathe again. And they were attached to monitors in the NICU. And if there wasn't enough oxygen in their blood, a light would flash and an alarm would sound, and the NICU was filled with flashing lights and alarms. It is impossible to describe the sickness in the pit of your stomach while you are trying to bottle feed your preemie and send them healing energy and fill them and soak them with love and comfort before you are ushered out of the room. And then an alarm goes off and you have to calmly discern whether it is your child who cannot breathe. And then you feel relief when it isn't. And then guilt because you felt relief. Because that means it is someone else's child who cannot breathe. Did I make my daughter wear boys' clothes and get a short haircut to make a point? One night I had to go deliver milk and I still couldn't walk very fast because of my stitches. And after certain hours, you're only allowed to enter the hospital through the emergency room. But because I had to go to the NICU with all of those preemie babies, I didn't like to go through the emergency room because it was winter and it was full of people who had the flu. And plus, the elevators for the NICU were very far from the ER and they didn't often have enough wheelchairs in the emergency room. So Mike dropped me off at a side door and went to go park the car. And finally someone came out and I began my slow shuffle toward the door carrying my cooler full of breast milk. And despite the pulling of my stitches and how tired I was, I pushed to get to the door before it closed when a security guard came running across the parking lot yelling at me to stop lecturing me on how I just can't go wherever I please, asking me what the hell I was doing there. And I get that it is his job to make sure that people aren't just breaking into the hospital at night. But if he had just taken like 2 seconds to ask me instead of trying to, but instead of getting angry and instead of trying to explain anything, I remember letting myself cry, making myself weak, making him want to protect and help me. Instead of trying to shame and yell at me, I told him my babies were sick and I needed to give them my medicine that I made with my body. My babies, my babies. And he mammed me and let me go in. Did I make my daughter wear boys' clothes and cut her hair to make a point? You know what I actually worry about as a parent? I worry about how I'm going to raise a person who doesn't have to wear a thong if she doesn't want to. I worry about when they come home and tell me that some games are for girls and some games are for boys. And then what? Some clothes, some words, some education, some jobs. I worry about whether I will be able to fortify them enough against other kids and parents and the media and television and books that are going to tell them that they need to change who they are in order to be valued by society, and that thin, white femme is the default finale that they are going to have to spend the rest of their lives learning how to be. There's this sort of tired old joke about how they don't hand you a manual when you leave the hospital with your babies. But actually, there is a manual, and it's color-coded. And to be honest, I would have 100 and 1,000 more of these completely guileless conversations. When I was pregnant and I had a baby shower, I asked people not to send me pink clothes. And it's not because I don't like pink. It's because I knew that the world was going to pinkify them. And I wanted them to see that pink was a choice. And certainly not the first choice. And absolutely not the only choice. And I had relatives say shit to me like, when you're holding your baby, are you really gonna care what color they're in? I would have an infinite amount more of those nosy and guileless conversations if it would save my child from having to explain herself even once. It is bizarre to me what people question when it comes to stuff like this. People have like guns versus tiara gender reveal parties. Like people think it's inappropriate for children to learn about gender, but put their baby boys in ladies' man onesies. And ask little girls if they have boyfriends in kindergarten. Parenting is so hard. And mostly I spend my time wondering if I'm even doing the right thing, if I'm just like confusing them or making it so that someday they will rebel and become like repressed, like turfy Serena Joys. And they've told me over and over in like toddler way, like, remembering your pronouns is so hard. Then, the other day, a babysitter told me that she was getting the girls ready for bed and admitted that she had slipped up and said, "Oh, is this what your mom does? Does she tuck you in like this?" And Turtle said, "No, they." Aww. Thank you.
Just a bit of a break, like I said, so you can freshen up on your drinks, go to the bathroom, and hopefully come back in and have a conversation with us.
Get out of here so I can sell you those drinks.
Yeah. What? Nope. Oh yeah. That's Hold on, I gotta put the charger in the thingy.
Most intense last line of a play I've ever seen in my whole life.
I got it already.
By the way, if you ever want to be disgusted and also laugh a lot, just go so graphic. I don't know.
Where's the record button? I think it's on that side. Again,
There's live action and also cartoon.
again, I'm not
Just hit
surprised.
whatever button you hit to record just.
I think.